Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about one of the most beautiful moments that's ever happened in Dungeons and Dragons, and how Dungeons and Dragons continues to drive forward emotional evolution for all of humanity. All right, so we're in the days of one Dungeons and Dragons, and basically one Dungeons and Dragons comes forward and it says, hey, Dungeons and Dragons from 1974 until 2022. Actually, I would say until 2021 we're still there. We're still printing PHBs that say, hey, if you're a dwarf, you get +2 Constitution. If you're an elf, you get +2 Dexterity because you're a dwarf or because you're an elf, right? Now, here's the thing. Dungeons and Dragons is made by humans. They are flawed and they make mistakes. And Dungeons and Dragons right now, with one Dungeons and Dragons, is saying, hey, we've gotten race and attributes wrong for 48 years, and now we're going to fix it. And this is a really, really big deal, and really, it's a wonderfully beautiful moment. You and I, we love Dungeons and Dragons. If you don't love Dungeons and Dragons, you ain't up on this channel. That's just the reality of it. All right, but we love Dungeons and Dragons. We might love it for different reasons, but you and I both love Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, and the reality is, it has mistakes, it has flaws in it, right? And we want the game to respond when flaws are called out and fix the problems. And this has been an incredibly bad, repugnant problem in Dungeons and Dragons for a long time, right? And it's been carried by every single designer, right? They all repeated this problem. Gygax repeated this problem. Every greater creator in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Gary Gygax, Lorraine Williams, Jonathan Tweet, Robert Heinzu, and now and Chris Perkins. Every single one of them has repeated this problem in Dungeons and Dragons until now. Okay, so basically, what we've been saying in Dungeons and Dragons is that you get your attributes, you get your strength, you get your strength, your dexterity, your constitution, your physical attributes, and you get your mental attributes, your intelligence, your charisma, and your wisdom from what you are. This is outrageously repugnant, right? Like, just think about this, right? If you think about a person who says, well, black people have more strength than white people, that is outrageously, outlandishly wrong. It is, and it's repugnant. It's utterly repugnant, right? If you were to hear a human being say this, you would be like, that's one of the most repugnant things I've ever heard in my life. That's not based on science. That's not based on anything except prejudice. That is a horrible, disgusting thing to say, right? And Dungeons and Dragons has been saying it since 1974. They're like, you're a dwarf, you have a +2 Constitution. You get a +2 Constitution because of what you are, right? And this all ended with one Dungeons and Dragons. One Dungeons and Dragons is fixing a huge problem in Dungeons and Dragons. It's saying, no. No one has attributes based on what they are. They have attributes based on what they do, right? And so basically they're saying, hey, if you're running a dwarf, you could take your +2 and you could put it into wisdom. There are wise dwarfs, or you can put it into dexterity. There are dexterous dwarves, right? However, we are going to acknowledge many dwarves, not all, but many dwarves have high constitution, and the reason why is what dwarves have chosen to do, right? So basically, dwarves sit in mountains and forge weapons over fire, right? Yes, if you're spending the vast majority of your time, the majority of dwarves, right? If you're spending a lot of time doing this thing, then typically that's going to make you, not you as a dwarf, but you personally, individually, have a higher constitution. If you were an elf and you are constantly walking through a forest and making sure that you're not stepping on poison ivy and ducking under branches and using trees to move through the forest quickly, your dexterity is going to be higher because most elves are living in the forest and need high dexterity to move about their environment, right? But the reality is, if you're an elf, Dungeons and Dragons is saying to you now, if you're an elf, you can be an intelligent elf. You can be a charismatic elf. You can be a strong elf. You can put your +2 where you want, because what you are does not determine your attributes. It doesn't determine your physical and your mental attributes. What you do determines it. Jeremy Crawford declared this in a very long video that talks about character origin. He said, we are defined by what we choose to do, not by what we are, right? This is huge, right? So Dungeons and Dragons is coming to Christopher Perkins and Amanda Heyman and Jeremy Crawford and Ray Winninger, and they are learning about humanity through the game, right? Imagine that Dungeons and Dragons needed to teach people that people are not defined by what they are when they're born. They're defined by the choices they make, right? It shouldn't have taken Dungeons and Dragons to teach us this, but Dungeons and Dragons did teach us this, right? And some of us already knew it, right? And it reminds us. And why do we need a reminder? Because Dungeons and Dragons exists in this world. And in 2016, we had one of the most repugnant, most monstrous human beings to ever hold the U.S. presidential role, right? And, Donald Trump rolled in and called, foreign nations SHIT holes and 100 other horrible things. And every day between 2016 and 2020, in different, subtle, horrible ways, he's like, if you're an American with this kind of skin color, I love you. And if you're this kind of American with this kind of skin color, you can go kick rocks, right? And he was repugnant, and his prejudice was worn like a badge, right? And in that world, where literally the president of America is trying to build a world where people believe that our mental and our physical attributes are from what we are rather than what we choose to do. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons is critically important, right? To say, no, of course not. Your +2 goes where you want based on what your elf, what your dwarf does, not on what they are, right? So this is Dungeons and Dragons advancing the emotional evolution of humanity, saying, saying, listen, like, the strongest survive. That's the way evolution goes. And the strongest people in this world believe in the truth, which is what we choose to do determines our mental and our physical attributes, not what we are, right? And that is an emotional evolution that Dungeons and Dragons is pushing. Dungeons and Dragons is not a toy. It's not Chutes and Ladders. It is a tool, and it will leave. And the moment you sit down to play Dungeons and Dragons or to run Dungeons and Dragons, you will be forever changed, and it will be for the better. It's just the way it works, because Gary demanded it. Gary Gygax demanded stronger, better human evolution and intellectual evolution. And for Dungeon Masters and Dungeons and Dragons players, we are never allowed off the hook. We are always driven to do more, be more, and to have more kindness, more tolerance, and more inclusivity. It is the heritage that each one of us gets from Gary Gygax. And he calls from the grave, saying, do not let up. You must evolve intellectually. You must evolve emotionally. And this is a beautiful moment. It took Dungeons and Dragons to remind us our physical and our mental attributes come from what we choose to do, not what we are. Because we are all human, right? And the color of our skin doesn't determine our abilities or our future or our opportunities. We can move beyond it. Gary calls every day from his grave to remind us of that. And you will see it in One Dungeons and Dragons. All that is my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.